Hey everybody, so we are live. Before we go into the interview here and before we start asking questions of our guest today, I'm just going to spend about 30 seconds introducing how the interview will work. I do have scripted questions today which I will go through with our guest, but as we get towards the end, I will verbally introduce when it is time to start typing out those viewer questions. And please don't be shy about typing those viewer questions out towards that end there. And like I say, just be aware that I will announce that when it is time. So without any further ado, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, respective of where you're watching from in the world. My name is Mark Allard-Will, and I will be your host today. But as you can see, I am not alone. I'm joined from way out west in Vancouver by Dino Pai. Dino, can I ask you to introduce both yourself and your work to the viewers, please?
My name is Dino Pai. I'm a Vancouver-based artist, originally born and raised in Taiwan until I was about 13 or 14. My family moved here. Um, my work is a bit all over the place. I'm currently a full-time animator for kids' cartoons. I've also done a lot of comics in the past, illustrations, freelance here and there. Yeah, is that good?
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. So your first graphic
Thank you.
novel. Oh yeah, no, you're welcome. It's great to have you here. So your first graphic novel, Dear Beloved Stranger, was published by Top Shelf Comics, which, for those who don't know, is a large and definitely not inconsiderable publisher of comics globally. What would your advice be to new comic book creators on getting the attention of publishers?
Yeah, so Dear Beloved Stranger is technically self-published. I've shown Brett and Chris, the publishers. I think Brett is no longer working there, but Chris Starrow still works there. Um, I showed them my book, and they said, if you're able to get a Zurich grant, we can distribute the book for you. So I applied for the grant. Many people probably don't know about this grant because Elaine and I actually got the last round of the grant for comic book artists. It's funded by Peter Laird, one of the co-creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And for years, they funded self-publishing comic artists to print their books, distribute them, etc., etc. Um, so I applied for the grant. They gave it to me, and Topshop was good with their word. They helped me distribute. They also like got me I used their copywriter, their graphic designer to design the book for me. Um, so so that's that. In terms of advice for people who want to get published, I guess since I'm technically self-published, I really don't know what to say. I think one of the things that goes into being published is not just how good you are and how good the book is. Publishers have their own identities, and if you're really good but your book doesn't fit into their lineup, they're not going to publish you. They're just going to tell you, "Oh, that's a really good book, but sorry, we can't publish you." So maybe take a look at what's out there, what people are publishing, and find a publisher that fits what your work looks like, and try to cater something to them.
That's really good advice. Yeah, because every publisher has what their identity is. For Elaine and I, with Renegade Arts Entertainment, their identity is very much Canadiana and very much history and horror as well. So that's no, it's like when you go to be interviewed, right? Know something about your employer before you, like, that's the advice I always give for a job interview, same kind of thing, right? So, yeah, wonderful advice
Yeah.
there.
So yeah, and some like Chris Ware ended up just publishing his own book, even though he's one of the best in the business, because he wanted to have control over what his books are going to look like in the end.
Yeah. So let's stick with Dear Beloved Stranger for a moment here. It's a very unique graphic novel and one that I'm very much a fan of. I'd describe it as the journey of an artist finding his place in the world, struggling with carving out his identity. Um, but when you write something as personal as this, because it is very autobiographical, is it hard to write? And are there things that you choose to fictionalize to perhaps have that distance from yourself?
Yeah, well, it was hard to write in the sense that I never really thought of myself as a writer before that. Like I said before, I grew up in Taiwan where, we spoke Chinese. And then I moved here when I was a teenager and almost like having to relearn a new language from scratch. Um, growing up, I never thought that I was going to be a writer. It is after the book got published and somebody saw the book and asked me to write a story for. Eventually, the project got scrapped, but they really liked the work that I did for them, and I got paid for it too. And that's when I started embracing the role of a writer and thought I should really take it more seriously. So it was hard to write, definitely at the time. Um, but I don't think it was hard because the book was personal. If anything, because it was personal, it was easier for me to write in a way because it's something. Because you know how people tell you write what you know best, and the subject matter being so personal is definitely fits into that. Um, what was the second part of the question?
So the second part was, is there anything that you chose to fictionalize to give some kind of distance between
Ah,
yourself?
right. I think the things I chose to fish, there's definitely it's more like for just storytelling purposes that I chose to fictionalize things. A lot of stuff that are in the book did happen, but maybe not in the same chronological order, or there's some details I chose to omit or dramatize. There are things that happen with different people that I combined into one character. So things like that. It's mostly for a storytelling purpose.
That's wonderful. So another big element, of course, of Dear Beloved Stranger is the artwork, and obviously that is created by yourself. It's very striking because it's comic book artwork that has a very big fine art flair to it, featuring elements such as ink washing, watercolors, and then there's segments of the book where we drop into cubism, and your self-portrait changes into a marionette. Um, can you tell us a bit more about your inspirations behind these art choices and if there were any struggles in combining the fine art world with the comic book world?
Yeah. When I made the book, I had just graduated from in an art school. I looked at a lot of different kinds of art. I hit the museum a lot. I went to school in New York, and I would go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Museum of Modern Art, and a bunch of others very often. So I was looking at a lot of art at the time, and it just felt kind of natural to use the repertoire that I know that I'm familiar with. In terms of putting all these elements together, as I said earlier, my work is kind of all over the place. I would consider myself a little bit of a jack of all trades. Not really great at any single one thing, but um, I have very, very versatile interests. So I was going for, you know the saying, 1 + 1 is greater than 2. I wanted to use the juxtaposition of the different elements to create new meanings just by placing an element against another one. So that's the it was really fun. I wouldn't say it was very difficult, it was fun.
That's fantastic. Sorry, Dino, your audio just dipped out there when you said at the beginning where you graduated from. Just for the purpose of the viewer here, where was it that you graduated from?
I graduated from a school called Parsons New School for Design. The school is really famous for the fashion department. If you heard of the show Project Runway, that's where, or at least it used to be where they shot the show at the very beginning.
Oh, that's a wonderful bit of trivia there. Um, so Noah's Ark is your sci-fi comic book adaptation of the Christian mythology of the same name. How do you approach adapting something that is so big as this cultural juggernaut of mythology?
Um, well, I chose the story because for a couple of reasons. One, because when I was a kid, my mom bought us a set of children's books, and she would read to us before bed. One of the books was Noah's Ark. At the time, I didn't know it was. I was a kid. I didn't know it was a Bible story. I just liked looking at the drawings and looking at all the different animals, spotting the animals and naming them in pairs. So I have a very personal kind of connection to the story. And I also I think it's just a really rich story. Even though I wouldn't say that I'm a religious person, I consider myself agnostic. I do think the Bible offers some really rich myths and tales. Noah's Ark is one of my favorites. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So you're a big fan of manga and anime. Does this love of manga and anime inspire your work in comic books, and in what ways does it inspire them?
Yeah. I'm working on a concept for a new book, and it's very manga. It's very Dragon Ball. It's actually I have very vivid memories of. I think I was like 7 or 8. Community library. I barely knew how to read, and I spent hours looking at the pictures of this Dragon Ball book that I found. So it has a very deep impact that's very deeply rooted. I think in terms of even Dear Beloved Stranger, you can see how the pacing was influenced by manga. Manga pacing tend to be, I don't know if you'd call it faster. They take a lot more pages to tell the story, but the reading experience is a lot more fluid. Like a fight scene can last a couple hundred pages, whereas, in a Western graphic novel, that's like the entire book. So I think you can see the pacing show up in Dear Beloved Stranger. And it's made a pretty, I think that influence shows throughout a lot of the newer generation of Western artists' work as well.
Yeah, it's I've been a fan of One Punch Man, and you can definitely see the idea of violence being removed from something that's terrifying into something that's comedy coming into comic books, and I think that's it's great to see that kind of outside influence coming in.
Yeah,
Um,
it's funny because One Punch Man, like the idea of a superhero, is definitely a very Western thing. So it goes both ways, right?
Yeah, it's almost like because I get very bored of the idea of Superman because a superhero who is invincible and cannot be touched by anyone is boring. And One Punch Man felt like it was making fun of that, which is fantastic. Like I was instantly on it. Um, but yeah, and finally, what one piece of advice would you give to people looking to become comic creators for themselves?
I always tell people, don't do it. I think I think not very many people can do comics as a living, like full time. Um, and I think of all the people that are doing it, if they just take that skill set and move into like an adjacent industry, they'd be making so much more money than in comics. So the people who actually are still making comics, I think here's the beautiful thing about it is that the people who are still making comics are just doing it because they love it.
Yeah, it definitely is a passion work. It's hard to break even. Um, so yeah, I think
Even
any
going
form of.
to even going to
Oh, sorry, Dino.
flying out to a different city there. Yep.
Sorry, Dino. We just lost your audio at the start of your what you said there.
Even going to conventions, flying out to a different city and tabling fees. It's really difficult to make that money back by selling at the conventions.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of expense to it, so you do have to love it for sure. But you can build a name, but just be prepared it's going to take a while, I think is the best advice anyone can hear. Um, so now we'll open it up for viewer questions. But while you, the viewer, are typing those questions, I will just take a moment to let you know that there is a link to Dino's website in the description of this live video. If you click on that, you can see Dino's portfolio, see information on how to commission Dino for artwork, and much more. There is also a link to buy Dear Beloved Stranger on Comixology. Now, this is something that you can buy around the world. It's not like Amazon or anything like that. Comixology just needs an account, so you can go there and purchase that. And I would recommend it. It's a wonderful graphic novel. Um, but we do have one question already from Elaine. Do you prefer working traditionally or digitally?
So I went back to school for animation 2 or 3 years ago, and it was really funny because I was in my early 30s, but a bunch of the other people in the program were like 19 or 20, and I felt at the time very comfortable on paper, and drawing on the Cintiq, drawing digitally was like drawing with my left hand almost. It was very uncomfortable for me. It took me a long time to get used to it. But then I realized that the people that went to school with me, the really young people, they spent most of their life growing up drawing like on a Wacom tablet. And we'd have live drawing class where we have to draw on paper, and they would say like they feel like they're drawing with their left hand, like it was very weird and uncomfortable for them, which I thought was really funny. These days, I still have a love for just dipping a pressing a brush or a nib pen on a piece of paper. There's something really satisfying about it. But drawing on the computer has a lot of advantages too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that Elaine, because Elaine is my partner here. So Elaine and Will, for those who don't know, creator of Look Straight Ahead, the graphic novel, definitely prefers traditional mediums like comic board, markers, inks,
Yeah, I think
pencils.
we're probably around similar age, right?
Yeah, very similar. And but I know of people older as well, like Jason Sylvester, who I spoke to, who while he likes a mix between traditional and digital, he does prefer the digital. And so it seems to be something that it's really artist preference.
Yeah.
And what kind of traditions did you grow up with? What do you feel most comfortable with? Because we can get locked in our ways, right? And
Yeah.
so
I
yeah,
think I know a lot of people who like to do their on the computer and they'll print it out with very light blue lines and then they'll ink the over the printout with black ink so they get that kind of beautiful ink drawing on top of their digital drawings.
yeah. I think I once heard Tom Grummett said that he's done that a few times. I might be misremembering that, but I believe that's what he said to me once. So we do have another question here from Olivia Roberts. Are you working on any new story projects right now?
Yeah, well, Noah's Ark is ongoing. I'm at chapter 8 out of 10. Uh, so fingers crossed it's going to be finished soon. Um, I was scheduled to table at VanCaf this year, and I plan to bring the first chapter of another book that I wanted to start, and the light within his heart. Um, but then plans went sideways because of the pandemic. So yeah, that's in the works. Um, there's another animation project that I want to work on, and down the road, another kind of manga-based project, comic book that I want to work on. I think I mentioned it earlier.
Fantastic. Sorry, the audio just cut out again. You said the name of that other project you're working on is called And the Light in His Heart.
Alex stayed in the light within his heart.
Right, okay. Yeah, thank you for that. So Elaine just says in response to when you said about some people do the sketches digitally, print them out, then ink over the top of them. She has responded with, yes, I was just listening to a podcast where somebody said that they did that.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be fast.
I think the strength of drawing digitally is how easy it is to make micro adjustments and to kind of fix things and try something. You can make an arm a little bit bigger and see how it looks. Rotate it a little bit, make everything smaller, make everything bigger. So adjusting stuff, copying and pasting, tracing stuff, all that stuff is a lot easier and faster. Is really good. Is better than an actual eraser. So a lot of people rely on these tools on the computer, but the weakness is that it doesn't give you that kind of hand-drawn touch, the authenticity.
Yeah.
So you combine the ink drawings over that, and it's a really good way to go about it.
Awesome. Well, Dino, I've got to be honest with you, this has been an absolute privilege today, a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed having this chat with you, and it looks like the viewers have got really good information from it and have enjoyed this as well, so that's been wonderful too. And Dino is one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet. So if you see a convention come into town, comic book convention, and Dino is listed, absolutely go and say hi, get a signed comic book from Dino. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And we
Thank you.
will be back with another interview soon.
Like, share, subscribe.